Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on a mission really to uncover a crucial yet often overlooked part of technological history. We're taking a deep dive into the incredible contributions of women who shaped the very foundation of computing long before many of us even conceived of a computer. It's a story filled with ingenuity, resilience, and frankly, some surprising twists you won't want to miss.
That's absolutely right. And our sources for this deep dive, they span historical reports, academic articles, and some really deeply personal accounts. This allows us to sort of peel back the layers and illuminate the surprising facts and enduring legacies of these true pioneers. We'll explore their triumphs, the formidable challenges they faced, and, crucially, how their foundational work continues to influence our digital world today. Consider this your shortcut to being exceptionally well-informed about a truly fascinating subject. It reveals just how much of our digital infrastructure owes its very existence to these remarkable, often unsung women.
Okay, let's unpack this fascinating journey. We should probably start way back, right? Like 19th century, with a figure whose insights were truly revolutionary. A woman who, in many ways, saw the future of computing before anyone else could even imagine it.
We begin our story with Augusta Ada Byron, the Countess of Lovelace. And she was remarkably young, only 17 years old, when she first encountered the eccentric but brilliant inventor Charles Babbage. She visited his workshop, saw his difference engine, this marvel of brass and gears designed for mechanical calculation. And Lovelace, she immediately recognized its profound potential. She saw beyond its function as a mere number cruncher. She famously dubbed it a thinking machine, which, was a truly visionary term back then. Most people just saw mechanical devices as tools for simple arithmetic. Her ability to grasp its abstract, almost philosophical capabilities, it went far beyond just crunching numbers. It was about the potential for automated reasoning.
But it was in her detailed notes, the ones she added to a translation, that's where her genius truly shone, right? Laying conceptual groundwork for what we now understand as software. Groundwork that would take, a full century to fully realize?
Precisely. In 1843, Lovelace undertook the significant task of translating a French article about Babbage's more advanced invention, the analytical engine. Now, this engine was a groundbreaking concept, a general-purpose, programmable computing machine, far more complex than the difference engine. What elevates Lovelace's contribution from just translation to, monumental insight are the voluminous notes she added. They were actually 3 times longer than the original article itself. Within these meticulous notes, she included this detailed table outlining the specific operations needed for solving complex mathematical problems, like calculating Bernoulli numbers. This table basically made her the world's first conceptual programmer for Babbage's analytical engine. What's even more astonishing, and frankly mind-boggling, is that she developed fundamental programming concepts we still use today. Concepts like the loop, a sequence of instructions repeated multiple times, and the subroutine, a sequence designed for a specific task you can call on again and again. These were theorized by her a full century before electronic computing machines even existed.
A whole century.
Yeah. Her theoretical understanding of how to instruct a machine to perform a series of operations, moving beyond simple calculation to complex adaptive processes. It was truly prophetic. She was mapping out the very architecture of computation, predicting software before anyone had built the hardware that could even run it.
She was a woman utterly ahead of her time in every sense, defying the conventions of her entire era, wasn't she?
Absolutely. Think about the Victorian era. Women in science were incredibly rare, often dismissed, confined to private study. It was a male-dominated intellectual landscape through and through. Yet, Lovelace was strong-willed, immensely creative, and exceptionally intelligent. Her mother, Lady Byron, actually encouraged her rigorous mathematical education, a rarity for women then, almost as an antidote to any poetic tendencies from her father, Lord Byron.
Interesting.
Yeah, this unique upbringing fostered a mind that could see logic and imagination intertwined beautifully. Her intellectual prowess earned her high regard from luminaries of her time, including Babbage himself, of course, but also scientific giants like Michael Faraday and John Herschel.
Wow, Faraday and Herschel knew her.
They did. Faraday, known for electromagnetism, and Herschel, the pioneering astronomer, they recognized her unique grasp of the analytical engine's potential. And as a powerful testament to her enduring legacy and foresight, the U.S. Department of Defense's high-level programming language, Ada, used for critical systems.
Named after her.
Named directly in her honor. That's a serious nod to her pioneering spirit and foundational impact.
Okay, so while Ada Lovelace was sketching out the future of software, the present demanded immediate computational horsepower. Which leads us to a different but equally vital kind of computer.
Yeah.
The human one. We're talking about the physical grind of early computation, right?
Yeah.
A monumental task often performed by groups of women.
Indeed. Of 4 electronic computers, incredibly complex calculations were done manually by these human computers, and these weren't just simple sums. We're talking complex tables for astronomy, ballistics, navigation, engineering, you name it. Maria Mitchell, for instance, she stands out as one of the first for the American Nautical Almanac. She meticulously computed the intricate motion of Venus. Her precision, her dedication, they were legendary. Later, she became the first astronomy professor at Vassar College.
First female professor.
First astronomy professor, period, which showcased the high-level intellectual work these women were capable of, even though they were often underappreciated and definitely underpaid.
It's astonishing to think that the chaos of the American Civil War, of all things, unexpectedly opened doors for many women into these precise, demanding roles.
It truly is a fascinating twist of fate. After the Civil War, you see a significant increase in hiring women as human computers. Many were war widows seeking ways to support themselves and their families. Society didn't offer many professional paths for women back then. Plus, there was a demographic shift, a labor shortage with so many men lost in the war. This led to these remarkable groups, maybe most famously the Harvard computers, though sometimes rather unfairly called Pickering's harem after the male director.
Oof, not a great nickname.
No, definitely not. Anna Winlock, hired in 1875 for 25 cents an hour, was part of this group. Edward Charles Pickering, the director of the Harvard College Observatory, he was quite deliberate about hiring women. He recognized they had the meticulousness, the mathematical aptitude to do the calculations and clerical work just as well as men. But crucially, from his perspective, he could hire them for significantly less pay, often for tasks men found, well, tedious or beneath them.
And their output was phenomenal, truly groundbreaking, despite this pervasive lack of recognition. Sounds like a truly thankless job.
Their contributions were absolutely immense. They laid much of the groundwork for modern astronomy. These women meticulously cataloged, to get this, around 10,000 stars. They made significant discoveries, like the famous Horsehead Nebula, that dark cloud in Orion, and they developed intricate systems for star description and classification, like the Harvard classification scheme we still reference. Annie Jump Cannon, she was one of the most prolific. She developed this incredible ability to classify stars at an astonishing rate, 3 per minute, just by looking at photographic spectra.
3 per minute? How is that even possible?
Intense skill and pattern recognition. She classified nearly 500,000 stars in her career, a record that still stands. Yet, despite doing such critical, intellectually demanding work, these highly skilled women often earned less than factory workers at the time. It really underscores how undervalued they were.
That's just insulting, frankly.
Yeah, it is. And by the 1890s, the field expanded beyond astronomy. College grads like Florence Tebb Weldon applied advanced math to biology, providing computational evidence for evolution by analyzing variation. Alice Lee worked with Carl Pearson in his biometrics lab, so their skills were clearly applicable across emerging sciences. It really makes you think about how many unseen, underappreciated hands built the foundations of our scientific understanding.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. As the 20th century progresses, especially with World War II, the demand for rapid calculation becomes absolutely critical. This ushers in a new era of technology and an unexpected cast of contributors, some even from Hollywood.
Indeed. Beyond the more commonly known wartime contributions, you find figures like Hedy Lamarr, the famous Hollywood movie star. What many don't realize is she led the secret life as an incredibly intelligent and passionate inventor. Apparently bored with acting and deeply concerned by the war, she wanted to contribute meaningfully. So along with her co-inventor, the avant-garde composer George Antheil, she developed a frequency hopping method for spread spectrum communication.
Frequency hopping? What was the idea behind that?
Their goal was to create a way for the U.S. Navy to control torpedoes remotely, making them impossible for enemies to detect and jam. The idea supposedly came to her while playing duets with Antheil on the piano, noticing how synchronized keys could hop frequencies. Pretty neat, huh?
That's amazing. So did the Navy use it?
Well, initially the Navy passed on it. They thought it was too complex or maybe impractical for the time. But their 1942 patent for this technique, it laid the foundational groundwork for modern wireless tech we use every single day. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, even GPS. Her foresight was absolutely staggering, a truly remarkable story of innovation from, well, a very unexpected source.
But the true revolution, the big one, came with the first all-electronic computers. These monstrous machines filling entire rooms like the ENIAC. And with these behemoths came the women tasked with the seemingly impossible job of programming them.
Right. In 1944, a group of 6 brilliant mathematicians were appointed as computers for this highly secretive U.S. Army project. That project created the ENIAC, the Electronic Numerical Integrator in Computer. Built at the University of Pennsylvania, it was the world's first all-electronic, general-purpose programmable computer, designed mainly for artillery firing tables. These trailblazing women, Kathleen McNulty, Frances Baylis, Elizabeth Jean Jennings, Frances Elizabeth Snyder, Ruth Lichterman, and Marilyn Westcott, they faced an immense challenge. They had to learn to program this complex beast using only logical diagrams and electrical schematics. Why? Because no programming languages, no manuals, not even dedicated programming tools existed yet.
Nothing. They were figuring it out from scratch.
Pretty much. They were taught and trained by Adele Goldstein, a mathematician herself, who played a crucial role in preparing them. She essentially created the world's first programming curriculum on the fly.
So they were truly on the bleeding edge of a new technological frontier. But despite their brilliance and the critical nature of their work, they faced this unique, pervasive challenge just because they were women.
It's a stark example of the deeply ingrained gendered expectations of the time. They were explicitly told, flat out, that only men could get professional ratings in this field. And designing hardware, that was strictly men's work. Programming software, that was relegated to women's work.
Like it was somehow less important or less technical.
Exactly. The perception was that software was more clerical, less intellectually rigorous, maybe like secretarial duties. Yet the reality just completely defied these stereotypes. The ENIAC women didn't just understand the abstract logic, they learned the machine's intricate workings by repairing it themselves. Get this. To fix an issue, they would sometimes have to physically crawl inside the massive computer, 18,000 vacuum tubes, miles of wiring to find and replace a faulty tube or fix a connection, a bug.
Crawl inside it.
Yeah. This hands-on experience shows their deep, comprehensive understanding of the hardware, not just the abstract logic. It totally undermined the restrictive gender roles imposed on them. They were literal troubleshooters, combining theory with practical engineering.
And what's truly infuriating is that their immense contributions were almost entirely erased from public view, a common and disheartening theme we're seeing here.
It's a glaring historical injustice. When the ENIAC was officially unveiled in 1946, these women were the ones who prepared the machine, its demonstration programs, ensuring it performed flawlessly for the press and VIPs. They painstakingly set up the programs by manipulating thousands of switches and cables. Hard, meticulous work, however, their pivotal role. Never acknowledged in official accounts or public presentations, not a word.
They weren't even invited to the party.
They weren't even invited to the celebratory dinner held afterwards. One computer historian vividly described their role at the unveiling as being like refrigerator models. Yeah, like those smiling models in 50s commercials, just presenting the product, no credit for the brains behind it. Fortunately, Kathy Kleiman, a computer programmer and historian, has dedicated like 2 decades of her life to telling their story. She founded the ENIAC Programmers Project and produced the film The Computers, which recreates that time when sexism was temporarily put on hold in order to win the war. It's a powerful, vital effort to correct the historical record and give these pioneers the recognition they absolutely deserve.
Another icon of this foundational era, whose name is pretty much synonymous with early computing, was Grace Hopper. Her journey into this field is just as captivating.
Grace Murray Hopper, a true force of nature. Initially a mathematics professor, she joined the Navy's Waves, women accepted for volunteer emergency service during World War II. She desperately wanted to serve, but initially at 34, they told her she was too old for enlistment.
Too old at 34, wow.
Right. But her persistence and obvious brilliance paid off. She was commissioned as a lieutenant. Then she was assigned to Commander Howard Aiken's project on the Markord at Harvard. That was an electromechanical computer used for ballistic calculations. In her own words, she became the 3rd programmer on the world's first large-scale digital computer. Her work involved designing complex programs for math problems, like the arctangent series, critical for naval gunnery. But she also authored this comprehensive 500-page manual for the Mark I, a detailed operational guide, everything from error codes to procedures.
But I'm guessing she wasn't credited for that either.
You guessed it. Despite its significance, she wasn't specifically credited in it.
And her name is indelibly linked to one of computing's most famous terms, a term that literally came from a real bug.
That's right. She's often credited with popularizing, maybe not coining, but definitely popularizing bug and debugging. The famous incident happened in the summer of '45, working on the Mark II. A relay bell functioned, the machine stopped. They investigated and found an actual moth trapped inside, causing a short circuit. Hopper and her team carefully removed the deceased moth and taped it into the logbook with the note, "First actual case of bug being found."
Amazing.
While bug and debugging were kind of floating around among engineers for glitches, this specific tangible incident cemented them in the computing lexicon. Hopper vividly described the work during the war as just relentless, round the clock, sometimes sleeping at their desks, hum of machinery, armed guards standing by because, there was a war on. She even recalled this harrowing moment during a hurricane where she and colleagues literally held hands to get home through the storm. That's dedication.
It's incredible commitment. Okay, so the war ends. The electronic computer starts its inevitable move from military secrets and academic labs into the commercial world. This transition must have brought new challenges, but also, critically, new opportunities for women to continue shaping the tech landscape, maybe even more profoundly.
Indeed. Following their groundbreaking ENIAC work, Eckert and Mauchly formed a corporation to build the UNIVAC I. That became the first commercial, large-scale electronic computer for business applications. And in this new venture, many women continued to be hired for programming roles, bringing that invaluable wartime experience. This included Grace Hopper, Adele Mildred Koss, Frances E. Holberton, Jean Bartik, Frances Morello, Lillian J. Their collective expertise was vital. They were translating complex military calculation methods to the burgeoning needs of businesses. Mildred Koss keenly observed something profound about this new field. Logical thinking and experience was as important as theory in using the computer as a tool to solve problems with programming.
So practical problem solving was key.
Absolutely. It highlights the practical problem-solving mindset these early programmers brought. Real-world application was just as crucial as abstract math understanding.
And Grace Hopper's vision, her push for making computers more accessible, bridging that gap between obscure machine code and human understanding that really took shape post-war, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Hopper joined Eckert Mauchly as a senior mathematician in 1949, and her impact was immediate and profound. She was a true hands-on innovator involved in every programming aspect. Her biggest push: higher-level programming languages. Languages using more human-readable commands instead of arcane binary or assembly code. This passion led her to develop Flowmatic, a language that notably used English commands. Picture this. Company VPs at Remington Rand, which acquired Eckert Mauchly, argued vehemently computers couldn't possibly understand English. Hopper famously, brilliantly replied with her signature wit, "I allowed that I never expected any computer anywhere to understand anything. All I was going to do was compare the bit patterns."
That's pure Hopper.
Totally. She understood it wasn't about the computer understanding English, but translating human logic into machine instructions more intuitively for the programmer. And get this. Without management's blessing, without even a budget, she forged ahead and developed the first compiler, A0, by mid-1952.
The first compiler, that's
Revolutionary. It translates human-readable code into machine code. It lets programmers write in a language closer to their own. Her philosophy was clear and bold, a real mantra for innovation. It's better to show that something can be done and apologize for not asking permission than try to persuade the powers that be at the beginning.
Love that. Just do it.
Exactly. That entrepreneurial spirit was crucial to her success and, frankly, to the evolution of programming itself.
This passion for accessible computing and her relentless drive led her to be famously known as the grandmother of COBOL. That's a massive legacy given COBOL is still used today, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is a massive legacy. The need for COBOL, common business-oriented language, arose in the late 50s. Existing programs were rigid, incompatible between machines, incredibly hard for business folks to use or adapt. Imagine rewriting whole systems just to switch hardware. Mary Kay Hawes of Burroughs Corporation initiated the crucial meeting to discuss creating it, seeing a huge commercial potential of a standardized language. The short-range committee that developed COBOL included several key women: Mary Kay Hawes herself, Frances E. Holberton, Jeannie Sammet, alongside Deborah Davidson, Sue Knapp, Nora Taylor, Gertrude Tierney. Betty Holberton, specifically, did crucial final editing before the official report in 1960. While many contributed, Hopper's persistence was vital. She wasn't the only one working on compilers or pushing for business languages, but she drove it through to completion, ensuring its widespread adoption in government and industry. COBOL is still remarkably popular today, especially in legacy systems, largely because of its natural language interface. Commands written in English made programming way more accessible.
It opened the door for programmers who weren't necessarily mathematicians.
Precisely.
Okay, but the impact of women stretched far beyond just programming languages. They were innovating across tons of applications and disciplines, shaping fields we might not even immediately connect to computers.
You're absolutely right. Consider Thelma Estrin. She got her PhD in electrical engineering in 1951, super rare for women then, and immediately applied her expertise in novel ways. She pioneered applying computers to bioengineering, a field barely even existing at the time. In 1961, she secured funding to set up the first computer facility in a medical school at UCLA's Brain Research Institute, specifically to study the nervous system.
Computers and medical school in '61, that's early.
Very early. There, she developed the systems for real-time analysis of neuron firing patterns, translating complex brain signals into digital data. And remarkably, she developed one of the first analog-to-digital conversion ADT systems, critical for translating those biological signals into digital data for computers. Her advice decades later for women entering biology or psychology. Simple, but profound. Don't dismiss the power of computers. You should strongly consider getting an additional master's in computer science.
Yeah, I saw that interdisciplinary future way ahead of the curve.
Totally.
And some of these women had to get incredibly creative, pushing boundaries literally and figuratively just to get their work done. Talk about resourcefulness.
Absolutely. Take Joyce Curry-Little, one of the original programmers at Convair Aircraft, late 1950s. She wrote programs analyzing wind tunnel data for aircraft models, like a major project for American Airlines, proving a new plane could take off in under a mile. The data, critical for safety, was on punched cards. The main computer, different building. Required physical transport.
The old sneaker net.
Exactly, but faster. To speed up moving these urgent cards, she and her colleague, Maggie DeCaro, famously put on roller skates and furiously skated back and forth between buildings.
Roller skates? No way.
Yes way. They even took a shortcut right through the model design shop, weaving through desks and engineers. And if someone was on the computer they needed, they'd apparently bump whoever was on the computer to get their urgent work prioritized.
Love it. Did they get it done?
They successfully completed the project on time thanks to sheer ingenuity and probably some scraped knees. Can you imagine rolling into an office today on skates demanding computer time?
That's amazing. We also have trailblazers like Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, a Catholic nun who made a significant mark on the academic side of computer science.
Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, a truly inspiring figure. She became one of the first women, very likely the first woman, to get a PhD in computer science in the U.S. back in 1965. Achieved this at the University of Wisconsin. A remarkable feat, given the times. To do her research, Dartmouth University famously had to break the men-only rule of their computer science center to let her use it. And while there, she helped develop the basic programming language.
Basic, wow, that was foundational for so many people learning to code.
Exactly. Beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code made computing accessible to a generation. Her vision went beyond just coding, too. She foresaw the future of AI, believing computers could mechanically simulate the cognitive process and assist humans in learning. She envisioned computers augmenting human intellect, enabling personalized education way back then. And the list just goes on, showing how pervasive their influence was. We have to mention Gladys West. Her meticulous calculations, complex mathematical modeling at the U.S. Naval Weapons Lab in the 50s and 60s, absolutely foundational for GPS technology, the stuff we use every day without a second thought.
GPS? Wow, I had no idea.
Right. Then across the pond, in the UK, Kathleen Booth developed assembly language in the late 40s, a critical step beyond direct machine code, making computers more programmable. Then there's Susan Kare, often called the Betsy Ross of the personal computer. Why? She designed the original user-friendly icons for the Apple Macintosh.
The little floppy disk, the trash can.
The moving watch, the trash can, the Happy Mac startup icon. Her intuitive designs made early personal computing approachable, even delightful, fundamentally shaped modern GUIs. And Elizabeth Jake Feinler at Stanford created the first resource handbook for ARPANET in the 70s, later the groundbreaking WHOIS directory, essential for navigating the early internet. She even suggested domain categories like .mil and .edu, laid the groundwork for how we organize the web today.
It's incredible. Their contributions are literally embedded everywhere in our digital lives.
They really are.
But it's clear that while women were so deeply integrally embedded in computing's origins, laying so much groundwork, something began to shift as the industry matured. It seems like a puzzling reversal of what looked like a promising trajectory.
Indeed. By the end of the 1960s, the demographics of programmers started shifting significantly, moving away from that earlier period where women often held the majority of programming jobs, especially during the war. While women still accounted for a substantial 30 to 50% of computer programmers during the 60s, a concerning trend emerged. Few were promoted to leadership roles, and they were paid significantly less than their male counterparts for the same work.
Even back then, the pay gap was there.
Oh, yes. And this is a stark contrast to the optimistic view in popular magazines like Cosmopolitan. In '67, they ran an article of the Computer Girls, painting this bright future for women in the field, saying it was a perfect, detail-oriented career. The reality was, beneath that surface of perceived opportunity, the seeds of a growing gender gap are already being sown, a gap that would widen dramatically in the decades to follow.
This shift in the 60s really marked the beginning of a concerning trend, a precipitous decline in representation that, shockingly, continues to impact the tech industry today. It's not just history. It's a current, pressing challenge.
The numbers are quite stark, and they illustrate this dramatic, almost baffling reversal. In 1984, women earned a significant 37.1% of all U.S. computer science degrees. A strong pipeline, right?
Yeah, that sounds pretty healthy.
But by 2011, that figure plummeted to just 17.6%. And even more concerning, it's basically remained stagnant since then, more than a 50% drop in under 3 decades.
That's a massive decline. What happened?
We'll get into the causes, but the effect is clear. This decline is starkly reflected in major tech companies. Google, for instance, in 2014 admitted only 30% of their global employees were women, and the percentage in technical roles even lower, around 18% for Google in 2015. Look at Silicon Valley, the supposed epicenter of tech innovation. Only 11% of executives are women, about 20% of software developers. This isn't just about fairness, it fundamentally impacts the products and services being built when perspectives are missing.
And this disparity goes beyond just who's in the room. It directly hits paychecks and investment opportunities for women in tech, adding financial barriers.
Yes, the economic impact is significant. A 2014 Fortune review of venture capital firms, it highlighted severe gender inequity in leadership. Only 4.2% of partner-level VCs were female among firms that raised substantial funds.
4.2%, that's tiny.
Tiny, and this directly impacts funding for female-led startups because VC funding often flows along established, predominantly male networks. Furthermore, the New York Times reported in 2014 that women in tech earn significantly less than men earning up to a staggering 61% more than female colleagues in equivalent positions.
61% more for the same job.
Yeah, imagine that. An op-ed that same year just bluntly stated, bias against women in tech is pervasive, indicating a systemic problem, not just isolated bad apples, makes it incredibly hard for women to build wealth and influence.
Beyond the raw numbers and the pay gap, what does this pervasive sexism actually look like day to day for women working in tech? What are they experiencing?
Well, the Elephant in the Valley survey from 2015 gives us some really troubling insights. They polled 200 senior-level women in Silicon Valley. A striking 84% reported being told they were too aggressive in the office, a label often slapped on women exhibiting the same assertive leadership praised in men.
The classic double standard.
Exactly. Furthermore, 60% said they were excluded from important events meetings, networking purely because of their gender. Perhaps most shocking, a full 60% disclosed receiving unwanted sexual advances in the workplace, mostly from superiors.
60%, that's horrifying.
It is, and disturbingly, nearly 40% of those women didn't report the incidents, fearing retaliation, damage to their reputation, negative career consequences. Even Google's internal salary spreadsheet from 2014, obtained by The Times, showed a consistent pattern. Women getting lower salaries than men for 5 out of 6 listed job titles. Systemic, not isolated.
We've definitely seen many of these incidents make headlines, bringing public attention to what was once a very private, often unspoken struggle. It feels like the conversation is wider now, at least.
It is wider now, but the issues aren't new. Back in 1997, Anita Borg, the senior researcher and advocate, openly complained women run into subtle sexism every day. She cited examples like male colleagues taking credit for her work, interrupting her in meetings, things that still happen today. At that time, only one woman was CEO among the largest Silicon Valley tech companies. Just one, highlighting the severe lack of female leadership at the top. More recently, the 2015 Crunchies Award event, a major industry show, faced heavy criticism for derogatory language towards women, sexist jokes, objectification from presenters.
Definite industry celebration.
Right. Then there was the high-profile discrimination lawsuit of Ellen Pao against Kleiner Perkins in 2015, a VC firm. She alleged gender discrimination and retaliation. While the verdict ultimately went against her, the trial itself brought huge attention to bias in VC and workplace culture. And in a more recent, really concerning development, the surveillance company Verkada Inc., was accused in 2020 of using its own facial recognition system to harass female employees, sharing images from internal cameras in a private chat group.
That's appalling. Using their own tech for harassment.
Truly alarming. And these aren't isolated incidents. They're indicative of a broader, persistent pattern.
And the issues often get more complex than just gender, right? Intersectionality plays a crucial role compounding the challenges.
They absolutely are. Gender discrimination in tech often intersects profoundly with race, creating extra layers of disadvantage. That 2014 Google diversity report, it showed women were 17% of employees, but Hispanics were only 2%, African Americans just 1%.
Just 1%.
Yeah. It starkly illustrates how women of color often face two vectors of oppression, sexism compounded by racism, makes their experiences uniquely challenging. The tech industry often views itself as a pure meritocracy, right? Which historically made it hesitant to acknowledge or address these complex demographic imbalances. Even prominent leaders can misstep. Like Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella's controversial 2014 comments at a Grace Hopper event. He suggested women shouldn't ask for raises but rely on good karma.
I remember that. The backlash was immediate.
Huge backlash. He later apologized, stating, "I believe men and women should get equal pay for equal work. If you think you deserve a raise, you should just ask." But the incident and his apology highlighted the need for even top leaders to be way more aware of unconscious biases, and there have been some, well, highly controversial attempts to address or explain these issues that just underscore the deep divisions. In 2013, this satirical C+ equality programming language got released, heavily criticized for offensive content, references to rape, trigger warnings, quickly removed, but it sparked outrage, highlighted a hostile segment.
Yeah, sounds awful.
Then more recently, the internal Google's ideological echo chamber memo in 2017 gained notoriety for suggesting biological differences contributed to gender inequality in tech. That sparked significant debate, huge backlash for promoting harmful stereotypes. These examples just show how complex, sensitive, and often fraught these discussions about gender and diversity in tech really are.
Okay, so given these persistent, deeply entrenched issues, what are the deeper underlying reasons behind this significant, enduring gender gap in technology? Our sources point to several complex, interconnected causes, it seems.
Yes, it's definitely not a single factor, but a confluence of elements. One argument suggests that decision makers in tech often consciously believe, not unconsciously, but consciously believe that men are inherently more technically competent.
Consciously.
Yeah.
Like, they actually think men are just better at it.
That's the theory presented in some analyses. This conscious belief, flawed as it is, then leads to biased investment in male tech personnel. Higher budgets for male staff, maybe. Men might get more resources for training, more critical projects, larger teams. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Men get more opportunities, produce more visible results, achieve greater success, and these results are then used circularly to reinforce that initial conscious belief in male technical superiority. This theory posits it goes beyond unconscious bias to a conscious endorsement of, well, misinterpreted scientific notions of sex differences. Secondly, deeply ingrained gender stereotypes play a huge role. Society traditionally views men as more authoritative, commanding, influential, especially in technical fields. Women, conversely, are often believed to be more selfless, nurturing, concerned with others, traits unfortunately not seen as compatible with traditional tech leadership in the popular imagination. So in tasks perceived as masculine, like many tech roles, women might get less influence, their expertise might not be fully acknowledged, even with equal or superior qualifications, and violating these stereotypes. A woman being assertive, direct, competitive in a male-dominated space often results in social penalties, labeled too aggressive, difficult, bossy.
The classic catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly. Conform and be overlooked, or challenge and be penalized. Then there's the very culture of science, engineering, and technology, the S-set culture, sometimes called the Athena effect. It can inherently be exclusionary. It often features masculine communication styles, direct, competitive, maybe dismissive. It promotes unsustainable working hours, bro hours, crunch time that often clash with caregiving responsibilities. This disproportionately impacts women who still often bear the primary burden of family care, makes it hard to sustain demanding tech careers. There's also intense pressure around children having them, caring for them, which can penalize women's careers. The motherhood penalty.
Right.
Plus, studies show young women are often discouraged from STEM from an early age. Pervasive negative cultural messages, from toy marketing to media portrayals, and parents, even educators, often have higher expectations for sons in math and science than daughters. further contributing to early gender bias, steering girls away before they even know what computing really is. The male-dominated environment itself is a significant self-reinforcing factor. Women are maybe 25% of employees, only 11% of execs. Google's 2014 data showed 17% women. This imbalance creates a cycle. Women leave tech at twice the rate men do, largely because of this challenging, often unwelcoming culture. Since men are the vast majority, corporate events, industry conferences often cater to male preferences, sometimes involve sexually provocative entertainment or lead to reported sexual harassment. This subtle hostility, offensive humor, exclusionary social circles, lack of female role models makes women feel unwelcome, isolated, disrespected, causes them to leave, making the imbalance even worse. Finally, a historical lack of awareness about sexual harassment is a contributing factor still echoing today. Sexual harassment was only formally recognized as a legal issue by the U.S. federal government in 1986. Before that, rarely reported, not because it didn't happen, but no formal framework existed, often dismissed as part of the job or banter.
So it wasn't even illegal, technically, for a long time.
Not in the way we understand it now. Broader public awareness didn't really emerge until 1991 with the Anita Hill hearings. This relatively recent recognition means public understanding is still developing, still evolving, which impacts how it's addressed in workplaces even today. Many companies are still figuring out effective prevention and response. And it's worth noting this controversial theory about early childhood development that sometimes comes up. Some studies suggest even in human kids, boys might prefer technical toys, wheeled vehicles, construction kits, while girls prefer social toys like dolls. This preference has even been observed in non-human primates like rhesus and vervet monkeys, showing similar play patterns.
Line colonies, really.
Yeah. However, critics strongly counter this. They argue infants absorb cultural norms from birth-parent interactions, toys, media. They question the whole concept of a truly pre-socialized stage where you could observe innate preference. They also point out female chimps use tools just as effectively as males, often passing on tool-using knowledge, suggesting no innate universal primate bias towards tech being male-oriented. It's crucial to acknowledge these different viewpoints. It highlights the ongoing, nuanced debate. Nature versus nurture in shaping gender differences and career paths.
Okay, despite these significant, deeply entrenched challenges, efforts are underway to create a more equitable, inclusive future in tech. What are some of the proposed solutions our sources highlight, both at a systemic level and within communities?
Well, researchers strongly suggest the burden of change has to fall on the companies themselves. They need to take responsibility for transforming their organizational structures, their cultures, rather than just expecting women to adapt to environments that are often inherently exclusionary. This means moving beyond simple diversity programs, just ticking boxes on numbers, to fostering genuinely inclusive environments. Environments where individuals from diverse backgrounds with varied thought processes can truly collaborate, contribute, and thrive. This involves creating clear promotion paths, implementing transparent pay structures, actively challenging biases in hiring and performance reviews, better outcomes for everyone, not just women.
And events can play a powerful role too, right? Building community, amplifying voices that were historically marginalized, creating spaces where women feel seen and supported.
Absolutely. Conferences like the Grace Hopper Celebration of Women in Computing, launched way back in '94 by Anita Borg. They exemplify this power. These events provide a crucial supportive environment, meticulously created by and for women in tech. Tens of thousands gather from around the world for networking, mentorship, technical sessions. It's a unique, invaluable platform, not just for sharing knowledge and fostering careers, but also to influence broader industry practices and policies, pushing for systemic change from within a strong, unified community. It's a space where women can see themselves reflected in leadership and technical roles, which is incredibly important.
Beyond those big conferences, what about the day-to-day efforts? The dedicated support networks working to uplift women in tech, from grassroots to global.
Oh, there are many organizations tirelessly advocating for and supporting women at various levels. Project Include, for instance, a nonprofit focused on ensuring everyone has a fair chance to succeed in tech. They emphasize inclusion, comprehensiveness, accountability through data-driven recommendations. Then you have well-established orgs like the Association for Women in Computing, Networking, Professional Development, the CRAW Committee on Status of Women in Computing Research, focused on research education. AnitaB.org runs Grace Hopper, works globally. The National Center for Women in Information Technology focuses on K-12 and workforce. And Women in Technology International, global network. And it's truly global. Groups like Arab Women in Computing in the Middle East, localized efforts like Ireland's Teen Turn and Boits, Nigeria's Women's Technology Empowerment Center. all working to empower women regionally.
And specifically for younger generations and underrepresented groups, those are crucial for building a diverse talent pipeline for the future. What initiatives are making an impact there?
For younger generations and underrepresented groups, several initiatives are really effective. Black Girls Code stands out. Focuses specifically on tech education for young African American women, empowers them with coding skills, mentorship in app development, robotics, aiming to change the face of tech.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Other community initiatives, Girl Develop, it offers affordable web software development programs for adult women in a judgment-free space, fostering practical skills. Girl Geek Dinners, an international group-building community informally. Girls Who Code, a national nonprofit working proactively to close the gender gap via summer programs, after-school clubs. Linux Chicks, a women-oriented community in the open-source movement traditionally male-dominated. And Sisters, a moderated listserv for mentoring and support for women in IT, fostering community and shared experience. These groups are building critical pathways from early education right through professional development.
So looking forward, what can we take away from this incredibly rich history and the ongoing efforts to address these disparities? What's the enduring message here?
Grace Hopper, always the visionary, she foresaw a future that has largely materialized decades after her predictions. She talked about small handheld computers people might use as portable checkbooks or portable offices. Sounds remarkably like smartphones and tablets, right?
Exactly like them.
Her profound legacy isn't just being the grandmother of COBOL, it's inspiring countless young people to enter computer science. She tirelessly advocated for making computers accessible to a much wider audience through programmer and application-friendly tools, believing computing wasn't just for a select few. And she lived by that mantra. There is no substitute for quality. That thoroughness is the most important thing. Setting a standard for excellence, for persistence, that still resonates today.
Yet, despite all this progress and the incredible history of women's foundational contributions, challenges clearly remain. The story isn't over by a long shot.
Indeed. Criticisms persist about the pervasive programmer culture in many startups, described as creating fraternity-like environments that actively discourage female participation. This culture, long hours, competitive posturing, exclusionary social stuff contributes to women leaving tech at twice the rate of men. There's also that lasting cultural stigma from the 80s when personal computers were sold as toys for boys, often marketed with boys playing games. That narrative still affects perception, steering young girls away early on. And crucially, the historical narrative itself is often focused predominantly on hardware development, a male-dominated field, which unfortunately overshadowed and minimized the foundational contributions of women in software development, a field they pioneered and dominated in the early days.
So the way we tell the story matters too.
Absolutely. This historical bias in storytelling continues to impact how we perceive roles and capabilities in tech today, masking the very roots of the industry.
What an incredible deep dive. Exploring these unsung heroes of computing history and really understanding the journey of women in tech, from the earliest days to the persistent challenges of the present.
It truly highlights how deeply intertwined women's contributions are with the very fabric of computing. From Lovelace's abstract concepts to the practical day-to-day work of programming, system design, innovation, their ingenuity, their perseverance built the digital world we navigate today, often against immense odds, often without proper recognition. Their story is a powerful reminder that innovation absolutely comes from diverse minds.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Knowing that so much foundational innovation came from perspectives that were often overlooked, undervalued, even erased from history. What hidden opportunities might we still be overlooking today by not fully embracing and empowering diverse voices in technology? What new thinking machines or fundamental loops are waiting to be discovered by those whose insights are yet to be fully heard and valued, simply because they don't fit a traditional mold? It's definitely a question worth pondering as we continue to shape the future of technology.